Welcome to Inside the Lines, presented by BetMGM, joined by Nick Bonaddio and Rachel Dory. I'm Olivia Harlan Dekker. Just a few weeks in, and we've already seen significant movement for some win totals, of course. Let's take a look at the ones with the most movement. Each of these teams have had their win total downgraded by at least 2 wins. The Jaguars opened with the highest total on this list at 10.5. But after losing to the Texans, it's now at 8.5. The Jets, obviously high hopes after trading for Aaron Rodgers, they opened at 9.5, but they've started off as bad as they possibly could have with his injury on just the 4th play of the first game, so they're now down to 6.5. And the Vikings and Broncos have yet to get their first win. Both play a winless team this weekend, so there should be a W there somewhere, but you never know. Rachel, I'll start with you. Do you believe enough in any of these teams to buy low on them and bet the over on their win total?
I don't know if I would buy the total, but there's definitely one total that's intriguing to me, and that is the Jets. I think if you look at it, they had high hopes. Obviously, with Aaron Rodgers, I think that they were kind of in the neighborhood of looking at 8 to 10 sort of wins. But I think that they're going to have to go out and get a quarterback. I know there's a Trevor Simeon situation. I think Joe Flacco might be a pretty good option. But I do think that they are going to get a QB. And for that, I think you have to kind of look at the value on the over here. I think that they have a chance with how good their defense is. They're going to keep them in games. And if they can get a couple of plays from really good Brees Hall or Garrett Wilson or whatever quarterback that they decide to trot out there, I think that they probably have the best chance of going over their win total.
Right. It'd be a shame to waste all that extra talent they have. Nick, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with Rachel. Excuse me. I agree with Rachel. I think the Jets are an interesting line at 6.5. I think you have to assume they're going to do something about the quarterback situation. But until you have more definitive answers there, I think that's sort of a stay away spot. I actually like the Jaguars here. The Jaguars, I have them from here getting about 8.4 wins. So 8.5 is pretty much in parity to what I would expect. They've got the second easiest strength of schedule moving forward. Their offense right now is significantly underperforming. I don't think anyone thought a team that has Travis Etienne and Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones was going to perform number 25 in terms of added points versus expectation. So I think they're underperforming. There's definitely some room to grow. There's some issues to clean up. I think if you were going to lean a line here, wait for the Jets news. But I think the Jags are a pretty interesting team to follow here for the number.
And a long trip to London to consider when thinking about their win total. Let's stick with the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence. He has the 8th best odds to lead the league in passing yards. So if we look at our passing yards leaders, you'll see Lawrence at the bottom. No surprise, Patrick Mahomes is the favorite at plus 375. Justin Herbert, a close second at plus 400 after throwing for 405 yards in Minnesota. Speaking of Minnesota, Kirk Cousins, the current league leader, tied with Herbert. The quarterback of the high-powered Dolphins offense, Tua Tagovailoa, sitting in 4th at plus 500. And then look at that big drop-off from Tua to Josh Allen, Matt Stafford, Jared Goff. Nick, who would you bet on to lead the league in passing yards at this point in the season?
I like Kirk Cousins. I think there's a couple different reasons. The first one, like their defense is really, really bad. I mean, it's the 6th worst defense. I think you look at his weapons, you look at Justin Jefferson, you look at Jordan Addison, you look at KJ Osborne. He's got a ton of weapons around him. They play inside a dome. And, surprisingly, Kirk Cousins hasn't missed a game due to injury since he was at Michigan State. He's surprisingly durable. And do I think it's the most likely thing to happen? No. But if it's plus 400, that implies a 20% likelihood. Do I think it's more than 20% likely that Kirk Cousins keep this up? Yes. And so I think for a lot of reasons, without disrespecting Tua, really good defense there. There's going to be a lot of blowouts. Matthew Stafford, players like that just don't really have the upside I see that Kirk Cousins has given the game environments that he's going to be in.
Okay, Rachel, which quarterback would you wager on from that list?
I've been on this guy for quite a while now. Even since week 1, I doubled down on it. I'm on Tua. I think that the training he went through in the offseason with the martial arts, I used to practice martial arts, so I kind of understand how the falling would relate to a football situation. And I think we've already seen sort of in the first few weeks, he's moving a little bit better. He's got a little bit more awareness of his own body. I think that'll help him with injuries. And yes, I understand that he is basically the opposite of Kirk Cousins and that he has missed a ton of games. And so that there is some level of maybe buyer's remorse there if you have done this before. But if you look at Tua, he's got Tyreek Hill, he's got Jalen Waddle, he's got Micah Gesicki. I mean, there's so many weapons on that high-powered offense. They just tore apart the Denver Broncos. At plus 500, I don't think he should be the fourth quarterback in this conversation. I think he should be a little bit higher up the ladder there. And so for me, with the implied odds, I think that there's huge value on this Tua line, especially if he continues the chemistry he's had with Tyreek Hill, getting Jalen Waddle back this weekend. If they can remain healthy, I think there is a recipe here for Tua to lead the league in passing yards.
Well, he will have a huge test this weekend. Let's discuss their upcoming AFC East clash in Buffalo. The Dolphins' high-powered offense, they lead the league in total yards, passing yards per game, and rushing yards per game. But they'll have to handle the Bills' defense that is second in the league in yards per game allowed and tied for second in sacks on the season. Rachel, the whole world is talking about the Dolphins hanging 70 last week. I don't need to look it up to know that the public's got to be all over Miami in this spot. What is your betting on this game?
Yeah, I think that's fair, right? When you put up 70 points, people are going to take notice of that, and you're going to take some money here. I think that the combination of the high-powered offense and Buffalo's really solid defense is going to be a really interesting test, not only for the Dolphins as a whole, but specifically for Tua. How does he handle the quarterback pressure? Is he able to take those sacks? Let's hope, obviously, for health and that he doesn't get hurt. I'm looking at Jalen Waddle here. It's not confirmed that he's going to play, but Jalen Waddle's over total. He, in his last two games against the Buffalo Bills, they've really keyed in on Tyreek Hill, and he's gone over 100 yards in both. So if Jalen Waddle is playing on Sunday, I think that's a total you have to look at because it's absolutely not going to be anywhere near 100. I think if it's in the 70s, that's an automatic bet for me. But if Jalen Waddle doesn't play, I think Tua's still going to throw the ball. I think he's going to be able to get it downfield. And so over 272.5 for me, that's an easy bet. I think I'm going to focus on player props in this game.
Nick, what about you? Are you looking at props or do you like the spread at all in this one?
I like props. I think I'm like Rachel. I think these two teams are dynamic enough that there's a lot of range of outcomes relative towards the actual game. And so zooming in on props a little more predictable. I am going to zig a little bit from Rachel, though. I think, she made a good point that, they have schemed out Tyreek Hill a little bit when they played. And I think where I'd like to focus more attention is on the running game. I think Raheem Mostert over 51.5. That seems low to me. We have a projection around 55 to 56. I think that line is deflated because of the emergence of Devon Achane, but that only really happened in garbage time once that game was out of hand. If you look at the touch share, you look at the snap counts, Raheem Mostert is a true bell cow back the way that they are deploying him. And I think if you think about it from a game theory perspective, I can see the Dolphins, especially if Waddle doesn't play, turning that game a little slower, leaning on the advantage they have on the O-line, leaning into the Bills being comparatively weaker on the D-line versus their secondary. And I like Mostert on the over with the rushing yards.
Okay, now it's time for one of my favorite segments of the whole show. It's time to fade the public. Let's stick in the AFC for this one and look at one of the most bet games this week. I don't have to tell you that there's a Swift effect going on and everyone's eyeballs are going to be at Chiefs and Jets Sunday night. I don't know, you guys. I know, Rachel, you're a resident Swiftie, so maybe you can fill us in, but the public is all over the Chiefs after their blowout win against the Bears, with Swift in the building, of course. The spread has only moved half a point from 9 to 9.5, with over 90% of the spread and handle on the Chiefs to cover the spread. Nick, are you fading the public or backing Kansas City?
I am fading the public. This is the ultimate hold your nose bet, but I am going with the Jets plus 9.5. I think, the Jets have limited tight ends. If you look at how they've done over the past couple weeks, they've shut down Travis Henry, they've shut down Knox and Kincaid from the Bills. Outside of Travis Kelce, there's no one on the Chiefs offense that really scares you. And so I think they're going to do their best to lock down Kelce. I think the Jets will start to, if you look at what Breece Hall has done in terms of his snap counts, they're getting him on the field. They're trying to slow the game down. I think a fair line here is actually closer to 7.5 to 8. I would bet this at 9.5. I think it's a little bit touchy kind of where it is. And I think you're looking at backdoor covers, you're looking at a low scoring game. It's really tough to back the Jets right now, but I think that number is just attractive enough that if you wanted to get a position on this, I think you got to go Jets, as hard as it might be.
Rachel, is this a no bet for you?
I think this is a no bet for me. I like some props in this game, but I'm with Nick and what he just said there. It is really, really hard to trust the Jets. Until they show me that I can trust them, it's one of those things where no matter what the numbers say, I'm kind of like, I don't know if I love that.
All right, let's look at totals then. Let's see what the public is all over. The public must be mad at America's team after they struggled in Arizona, losing to the Cardinals as a 12.5-point favorite. The total for the Cowboys game against the Patriots opened at 42, moved up 1 point to 43, but almost 90% of the bets are on the under. Nick, do you think this is an overreaction to the Cowboys' offensive struggles last week? And are you fading the public here as well?
I do think it's no reaction, but for me, this is a no bet. I think, we're just a couple weeks in the season. We don't really have too much information for, like what exactly the Patriots offense is going to turn into. I think you're going to see a lot of Ramondre Stevenson. You're going to see a lot of Tony Pollard. I think this is going to be a slow game. I just don't have a great feel and sort of the numbers coalesce around 42.5, 43, 43.5. And so there just isn't enough value for me to take a position here. If, gun to my head, if I had to, I'd probably take the over, especially as it's dropped into 42. But to me, this feels like a pretty clear no bet situation.
Rachel, are you fading the public? What do you think? Under?
I am fading the public. I'm going over on this one. I think we look at this and it's America's team, right? And so when you look at this, there's always going to be some level of overreaction in the betting lines because they are, apart from the Taylor Swift Chiefs, the most talked about football team. And so I think when you look at that, you have to say, okay, what are we really looking at here? And we're looking at, like Nick said, a Tony Pollard game, I think a Ramondre Stevenson game, but I think there are some potentials for some explosive plays here. I have this total closer to 47. And so for me, that's a few points of value that I think that there's some value there. And so that's something that I will be looking at. I will say you need to kind of keep an eye on the lineups and things like that because things change. It is a Bill Belichick team, and so you never really know. But right now, there's a lot of value on the over for me. I will fade the public here and go over. I think that the Dallas Cowboys will have a bounce back when you put that with the model. That is that's a recipe for me to bet the over.
Okay, I don't know about you guys, but I don't put too much stock into trends until we have a couple weeks under our belt. So I think it's appropriate to start this new segment, Trends with Benefits. For week 4, let's focus on some of these. First up, the largest spread of the season so far, 14 points in favor of the 49ers as they host the Cardinals. And according to Bet Labs, favorites of 14 or more points are 24, 30, and 2. That's 44% against the spread in the past 5 seasons. The Cardinals were just 12.5-point dogs at home against the Cowboys. Rachel, where do you stand with this trend?
Yeah, I think this is a super interesting trend, right? It's right on that 2-touchdown number. There's a lot happening. They just shut down the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, the San Francisco 49ers are not the Dallas Cowboys. They're a bit of a different offense. There's a bit of a different animal. This is a no bet for me, but I think if I were leaning one way, I would lean to the plus 14 and take the points here. I think that there's too many opportunities for a backdoor cover.
Okay, I mean, Cardinals 3-0 against the spread, one of the least bet teams through 3 weeks at 22% or less of the tickets. Nick, are you following this trend at all?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Rachel and I agree with you. I think trends are kind of difficult to really put a lot of stock in, but I think, much like the Jets, this is a hold your nose situation with the Cardinals. This fair line to my models is about 12 to 12.5, so there is a little bit of value. The Cardinals are a spectacularly non-public team, but they have the number 7 rated offense, number 13 rated defense in terms of net expectation. And so this team is better than most people think. 14 is a big number. I think you're thinking about backdoor covers. You're thinking about, is San Francisco going to let off the gas a little bit, give CMC a break? There's a lot of different scenarios in which I see Arizona getting to this number. If it gets to 13.5, obviously different story. But if it stays at 14, I do like Arizona in this situation.
Yeah, they have been sneaky this season, something to keep an eye on. Okay, sticking with trends, let's check out the NFC South. We have Buccaneers Saints. You can see these last 10 meetings, the Saints have been dominating. New Orleans is 8-2 against the spread in their last 10 and 7-3 straight up. The Saints are favored by 3.5 points on Sunday, New Orleans. We mentioned three teams that had this same trend going into last week, and hey, all three covered. So, Nick, are you following this one?
This to me is a no bet. I think you need more information around what David Carr's his status is. So David Carr and Jameis Winston, it's hard for me to imagine two different quarterbacks. With David Carr, you've got your risk averse, check downs. With Jameis, Derek Carr, yes, correct. Not David. This isn't 2004 all over again.
Right.
But no, until you have more information, to me, this is a pretty clear no bet.
Rachel, are you backing this trend, or do you want to talk about 2004 matchups also?
I was not even 10 years old in 2004, so I feel like I don't have a recollection that's even good enough at that point. I'm looking at, same like Nick, you need more information on Derek Carr. If he is playing, this is a trend I'm backing. I will take them at 3.5. I've liked what I've seen from Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers so far this season, but I think that the Saints have a little bit better. I think Chris Olave is primed for a big game, especially if Derek Carr is there. With Jameis Winston, you just never really know. And so this is one of those situations where you shouldn't bet until you really know the status of the quarterback. He's the most important player in this matchup for this particular bet. And so if Carr is healthy, this is a trend that I think has a great benefit and that I will be all over. But without that, it's a no bet for me.
Yep, the drop off from Carr to Winston was major last week against Green Bay. Okay, it's time for primetime props. We're going to share our favorite prop in one of the primetime games. So, Nick, why don't you go first? Sunday night, or finally one game on Monday night?
I'm going back to the Jets and Chiefs. I really like Jerick McKinnon in this situation. I think Jerick McKinnon has proven himself to be a really great safety valve over the years for Mahomes. Very, very consistent. I think, as I said in the previous segment, I think they're going to key in on Kelsey. No one else really on the receiving corps scares anybody on that team. If you look at what running backs have done against the Jets in this situation, James Cook, 4 receptions, Tony Pollard, 7 receptions. They're 12th in pressures against, and so there are going to be some pressure against Mahomes. He's not going to want to get hit, so I think they're going to scheme up a lot of, dials up to the running back, screen passes, maybe even some go routes for the running backs. I think Jerick McKinnon at 14.5, really, really soft number. I like the over here.
I like that one a lot. Rachel, which primetime props catching your eye?
I'm going to go a little bit of a different direction. I am with Nick, though. I like the running back props. I have both McKinnon and Pacheco to go over their receiving lines. But I'm a Swiftie, and Swiftie math is not as, popular as regular model math. But here's the thing. It's also Taylor Swift. And Travis Kelce is the best tight end in the game. And so even though they're going to be keying in on Travis Kelce, because like Nick laid out, he's really their only massive threat receiving wise, I still think that him and Patrick Mahomes are going to scheme up whatever nonsense, as they call it, they like to scheme up. I like Travis Kelce for an anytime touchdown. Taylor Swift is going to be in the building. That is just not something I can ignore. But the other thing I really like is Travis Kelce over 71.5 receiving yards. And so I'm all over the Kelce bets, but the best bet is a Travis Kelce anytime touchdown. I think he's going to get a couple of receptions like Nick laid out. Patrick Mahomes is going to have to get the ball out quickly. And Travis Kelce is a guy who can do long receptions and yards after catch. And he can also do those short receptions. And so I think he's the guy that Patrick Mahomes trusts. I like him at over 71.5 receiving yards, mainly because of his ability to get yards after the catch.
I thought we might get through the show without mentioning Taylor Swift's name, but you just can't. I mean, I don't think any show is getting through without saying her name. All right,
Absolutely
before we wrap up the episode, we've got to give you our blue chip bet. It's the best bet, anything we love, spread, money line, total, prop, whatever you want. Nick, what is your blue chip bet?
Well, for those of you who've been following the show a couple weeks, people know I like to dig in the crates for some pretty obscure bets.
Yes.
I'm going to the American Athletic Conference here, a titanic matchup between East Carolina and Rice. I think in this game, East Carolina should be favored. They're right now a -3.5 to -4 dog. I think they should be favored. The value is about -1 to ECU. Rice just doesn't have any kind of home field advantage. They play in a huge stadium that they've filled to 40%. ECU is a somewhat misleading record at 1-3. They played Marshall, they played App State, they played Michigan. They played those games competitively, despite being, not as good. But they played competitively in this game. Rice is not a strong team. I really do like East Carolina here, and I can't say it's the most public of bets, but there's pretty nice value here on East Carolina.
Okay, Rachel, what's yours?
My blue chip bet this week, I am going with a little parlay. I like Justin Herbert and Kirk Cousins, both to throw 2 touchdown passes. And that comes out at plus 147. So I think you're getting positive value there. Another option you can add if you really want to up the value here is you can add Brock Purdy, who has thrown 2 touchdowns or more in every start that he has made. And that brings it to plus 340. That is a major value bet for 2 quarterbacks in Cousins and Herbert, who like to air it out and are playing not fantastic defenses with the pass this week. Then you've got Brock Purdy, who's been Mr. Dependable, and they're playing the Arizona Cardinals. I think that they're going to try and air it out and then run the ball to run the clock out. I think there's a good chance to get some plus money value here this week. So that's where I'm going.
I can't wait for next week when Nick builds us a parlay in the AAC. That is what I'm really going to be licking my chops at. All right, everyone. Thank you for watching Inside the Lines. We'll be back every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern. We'll see you next week.